The call came on Richard's anniversary, 5 years since his death. And suddenly my estranged daughter wanted to reconnect on a remote hiking trail with notorious cliff views. I might have believed her had I not discovered the credit cards opened in my name. Had I not found the $2 million life insurance policy she'd taken out on me without my knowledge. The internet searches for undetectable poisons and hiking accidents. My own child planning my death. As I packed my bag for the trip, friends begged me to go to the police. But evidence meant nothing without motive, and motive was buried in the secrets I'd kept to protect her. Secrets about her father's true death. About the debts that forced her from college. When Elise pulled into my driveway with that rehearsed smile, I smiled back. She thought she was leading me to my death. But mothers know things children don't like. How to spring a trap while appearing to walk into one. She would learn what happens when you underestimate the woman who gave you life. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon right as I was placing fresh roses on Richard's urn. 5 years gone, and some days the absence still felt raw enough to steal my breath. That's when my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in nearly 3 years. Elise. Mom. Her voice sounded different, more measured, carefully controlled. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. I sat on the edge of my sofa, heart racing with a mother's persistent hope. It's good to hear your voice, honey. Dad's anniversary. Got me thinking about ... everything. About us. A pause. Then, I think we should spend some time together. Really talk, you know? The cautious joy bubbling up in me stuttered when she continued. There's this hiking trail up in Blue Ridge, Eagle's Path. It's beautiful this time of year. There's this incredible cliff view that Dad would have loved. Something in her voice made my skin prickle. In the 3 years since she'd walked out of my life, there had been no calls on birthdays, no cards at Christmas. Just silence and the occasional glimpse of her life through mutual acquaintances. Hiking? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. That's quite a change from your usual interests. I've changed, Mom, been working on myself, and I thought, maybe this could be our fresh start? The trail's pretty remote, no distractions, just us fixing what's broken. She mentioned those cliffs 3 more times during our call. Each time her voice took on an odd rehearsed quality that made my stomach tighten. I'll think about it, I promised, though every instinct was screaming caution. After we hung up, I sat with Richard's urn, fingers tracing the cool metal. What would you make of this, Rich? I whispered to the empty room. My phone pinged with a notification of fraud alert from my bank. Probably nothing, I thought, until I opened the app and felt the floor drop from beneath me. 4 new credit cards opened in my name. $87,000 in debt I hadn't created. My fingers trembled as I called the bank's security team. Yes, Ms. Wilson. These accounts were opened with your social security number and personal information. The representative confirmed. The addresses used were in Portland and Seattle. Portland, where Elise had moved after our falling out. Hung up and stared at the wall, Richard's smiling face looking back at me from our wedding photo. The timing couldn't be coincidental. Elise's sudden desire to reconnect, the mysterious credit cards that night, I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., I found myself calling Teresa Michaels, a private investigator who'd helped a friend through a messy divorce. Last year, Margaret Wilson, she greeted me 2 days later in a quiet corner of a coffee shop across town. You sound worried on the phone. I pushed the folder of credit card statements toward her. My daughter Elise, we haven't spoken in 3 years, and suddenly she wants to take me hiking in some remote location. Then I find this. Teresa's expression gave nothing away as she examined the documents. And you think your daughter is responsible? I hope I'm wrong, I whispered. God, I hope I'm wrong. A week later, I wasn't just worried, I was terrified. Teresa's investigation had revealed not only that Elise was indeed behind the fraudulent accounts, but something far worse. She's been searching online for hiking accidents, Teresa told me, sliding screenshots across her desk. Undetectable poisons. How to make a murder look accidental. My hands shook as I stared at the evidence. My child, my beautiful daughter with Richard's eyes and my stubborn chin. There's more, Teresa said gently. She's taken out a life insurance policy on you, $2 million. The room swam around me. That's not possible. She'd need my Has all your information, Margaret? The same data used for those credit cards? I stumbled to the bathroom and retched until there was nothing left but acidic fear. Back home, I found myself pulling out the old boxes from the attic. Richard's things I'd never had the heart to go through. Among them, his journals. I'd always respected his privacy, but now I searched them desperately for any clue to make sense of what was happening. The truth hit me, like a physical blow. Richard's gambling. The debts I never knew about until after his heart attack. The second mortgage on our house, the loans from people whose names never appeared in any official documents, and most damning of all, an entry from 2 weeks before his death. Margaret keeps saying Elise can stay at Stanford, that we'll find a way. She doesn't know how bad it is. How am I supposed to tell my daughter that her education, her future, everything we promised her is gone because her father couldn't stop? Elise had been forced to drop out of her dream school in her sophomore year. I'd told her it was temporary, that we'd find the money. I never told her why that her father's secret addiction had left us not just broke, but dangerously in debt to people who didn't use courts to collect. I'd protected Richard's memory at the cost of my relationship with my daughter. She thought I'd simply refused to support her dreams. And now she wanted revenge. I need your help, I told Teresa the next day. I'm going on this hiking trip. Teresa stared at me like I'd lost my mind. That's not the kind of help I provide. Margaret, we need to take this to the police. With what? Internet searches? They'll say it's circumstantial. And if we're wrong, if there's any other explanation, I'll lose any chance of reconciling with my daughter forever. And if we're right, you'll lose your life, Teresa countered. That's when I met Detective James Harmon, Teresa's former partner on the force. He reviewed the evidence with the impassive eyes of someone who'd seen humanity at its worst. She's right about the evidence being thin for an arrest, he finally said. But wrong about you going alone? His eyes met Teresa's. Remember the Langford case? The hiking accident last year that never sat right with the Rangers. Teresa's expression changed. You think there's a connection? I think it's worth finding out, but we do this carefully. Over the next week, I prepared like I was going to war. I hiked local trails daily, building stamina I hadn't needed in years. I memorized maps of the Blue Ridge area, particularly around Eagles Cliff. I learned about emergency signaling, basic survival tactics, and how to recognize common poisons. Your 3 check-in contacts will be Teresa, your sister Caroline, and your brother-in-law Michael. Detective Harmon explained. If you miss any scheduled check-in, we move in. You'll have GPS tracking in your boots and a recording device in your jacket. The night before Elise was due to pick me up, I wrote 3 letters, one to my attorney, one to Carolyn, and one to be locked in my safe deposit box. Each detailed my suspicions and the evidence we'd gathered. If I was wrong, I'd look paranoid. If I was right but didn't survive, at least Elise wouldn't profit from whatever she was planning. Standing in my bedroom, I touched Richard's photo. I failed her, I whispered. I was trying to protect her from your mistakes, and instead I pushed her to this. I slept fitfully, waking to every sound, wondering if each noise might be my last warning. When morning came, I packed my final items, including a satellite phone, hidden in a secret compartment of my backpack where I'd cut open the lining, and re-sewn it. At precisely 9 a.m., a car pulled into my driveway. Through the window, I watched my daughter step out of a shiny new SUV that she couldn't possibly afford on what I knew of her barista salary. She wore expensive hiking gear and dark sunglasses that hid her eyes. I took a deep breath and opened the door to whatever was coming. Mom, she said, hugging me with mechanical precision. Ready for our adventure? I hugged her back, feeling the stranger my daughter had become, and wondering if she could feel the recording device pressed between us. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied, the words truer than she could know. The drive stretched ahead of us. Like the plot of a suspense novel, I couldn't put down except I was living each page. Watching my daughter's hands on the steering wheel, noticing how she kept checking the rearview mirror as if expecting someone to follow. New car? I asked casually as we merged onto the highway. Just Elise, Elise replied quickly. Got a good deal? I nodded, pretending to believe the lie. The car sticker was still in the window, had been purchased outright 3 weeks ago. How's the coffee shop? I asked, maintaining the fiction that I hadn't been investigating her life. Fine, boring. Her fingers tightened on the wheel. Actually, I've got some side projects going, investment stuff. That sounds interesting. What kind of investments? Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Nothing you'd understand, Mom, no offense. The highway gave way to country roads as we drove deeper into Virginia's Blue Ridge Mountains. Elise kept the radio loud enough to discourage conversation, but every so often she'd glance at me with an expression I couldn't read. Actually, she said, turning down the volume as we passed a sign for a rest area. I've been thinking about practical things lately. Like insurance. My heart stuttered. Insurance. Yeah, I increased my life insurance recently. Just in case. You should too, Mom. At your age? I forced a calm nod. I'll look into it. I could help you set it up, she offered too quickly. My friend Ryan knows a good agent. First mention of Ryan, I tucked the name away as Elise suddenly signaled for an exit. Quick stop, she explained. Need to grab a few things? The few things turned into 3 strange detours. A specialty camping store where she purchased climbing rope for safety, a pharmacy where she vanished for 20 minutes, and a liquor store where she emerged with a bottle of Glenlivet, my favorite whiskey that I rarely indulged in since Richard's death. Back on the road, Elise became unexpectedly talkative, bringing up childhood memories with disturbing revisions. Remember when I had that dance recital in 6th grade and you missed it because of your book club? Elise, I was there. I have the recording. Your father was the one who couldn't make it because of his business trip? Her knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. That's not how I remember it. I sat 3rd row center. You were wearing the blue costume with silver stars. A flash of something, anger, confusion, crossed her face before she composed herself. I must be mixing it up with another time you weren't there. As we stopped for gas, I excused myself to use the restroom. On my way back, I heard Elise's voice from behind the building. Yes, we're still on schedule, she was saying into her phone, voice low and urgent. The trail closes for maintenance next week, so there won't be any other hikers. ... Yes, I have everything we discussed. She ended the call abruptly when she spotted me slipping the phone, not her iPhone, but a cheap burner, into her pocket. Everything okay? I asked. Fine, she said brightly. Just checking in with work. As we neared the mountain range, the forests thickening around us, Elise pulled over at a scenic outlook. Let's review the trail map, she suggested. She spread out a detailed map on the hood of the car, her finger tracing our planned route. I noticed she'd highlighted a section that passed dangerously close to Eagle's Cliff, a 200-foot drop that had claimed several lives over the years, according to my research. We'll camp here, she said, indicating a spot near the cliff edge. The sunrise view is worth the slightly more challenging terrain. What about this campsite? I pointed to a safer location in a valley. It's closer to water. Trust me, Mom, Eagle's Point is what this trip is all about. The intensity in her voice sent a chill through me. I checked the weather forecast, she added. Clear skies all week. While she packed the map away, I quickly checked my phone's weather app. Severe thunderstorms were predicted for our 2nd day, exactly when we'd be at the most dangerous part of the trail. At the trailhead ranger station, we signed in and collected our hiking permits. The ranger, a weathered man named Griffith, looked up from his computer with concern. You ladies heading up Eagle's Path might want to reconsider your timeline. We've had unusual wildlife activity up there, and some recent rock slides near the cliff section. Before I could respond, Elise, cut in. We'll be fine. My mother was practically raised in these mountains. Weren't you, Mom? Another lie. I'd grown up in suburban Maryland and had never been an avid hiker. We should listen to the ranger's advice, I began. We're losing daylight, Elise interrupted, pulling me toward the door. Thanks for the warning. Outside, I made my first scheduled call to Caroline while Elise loaded our packs. Hey, sis, I said cheerfully. Just wanted to let you know we've arrived safely. The views are exactly as Dad described them. Our code phrase for potential danger? Understood, Caroline replied, her voice tight. Call again at the scheduled time. As we shouldered our packs and approached the trailhead, I felt the weight of more than just equipment. My GPS tracker was active, the recording device was functioning, and somewhere nearby, Teresa and Detective Harmon were monitoring our progress. The trail began gently in a winding path through woods bright with early autumn colors. I noticed Elise constantly positioning herself behind me near steep drops, but ahead of me on safer terrain. She took frequent photos that seemed more focused on documenting my presence than capturing the scenery. Beautiful, isn't it? She asked, as we paused at a lookout point with a sharp drop-off to our right. She stood uncomfortably close to me, her hand briefly touching my back. I pretended to adjust my pack, stepping away from both the edge and her reach. Breathtaking, I agreed, and wondered if she meant that literally. The afternoon sun filtered through the canopy. As we found a small clearing for our first water break, I settled on a fallen log, deliberately wincing as I stretched my leg. Everything okay? Elise asked, her concern not quite reaching her eyes. Just old knees, I said with a self-deprecating laugh. And honestly, retirement hasn't been as financially comfortable as I'd hoped. These inflation rates are killing my savings. It was bait, and she took it instantly. Yeah, money's been tight for me too, she admitted, her guard lowering slightly. I made some investments that didn't pan out. What kind of investments? She hesitated, then shrugged. Cryptocurrency? This guy, Norian, he had the system. It worked at first. Then the market crashed and she trailed off, staring into the distance. Let's just say I'm in deeper than I ever planned to be. How deep are we talking? I kept my voice casual, mother-to-daughter concern. Deep enough? Double quotes, her phone chimed with a text notification, cutting her off. I glimpsed the name Ryan on the screen before she quickly tucked it away. Ryan, the investment guy, I asked. Her expression shifted from annoyance to something more calculating. Yeah, we're back together actually. Business partners now. The same Ryan she'd dated briefly 3 years ago. The volatile man with the expensive tastes and mysterious income who'd appeared in her life right around the time she'd stopped speaking to me. I didn't realize you two had reconnected. There's a lot you don't know about my life, Mom. Her tone was defensive. But beneath it, I heard something else. Fear. We continued hiking until midday, when Elise suggested stopping for lunch. I watched. As she prepared our food, noticing how she kept her back to me while filling our water bottles, when she thought I was distracted by a bird call, I saw her slip something from a small vial into one of the bottles. Here you go, she said, handing me the doctored water. Stay hydrated. Thanks, honey. I waited until she turned away to check her backpack, then switched our bottles while pretending to reorganize my pack. While Elise was taking photos of the viewer more accurately, documenting what she thought was my progressive poisoning, I slipped into the woods under the pretense of a bathroom break. Once certain I was out of earshot, I retrieved the satellite phone from its hiding place. Teresa, it's Margaret. She's drugged my water. I managed to switch bottles, but she's escalating faster than we expected. We've got your GPS signal, Teresa. Confirmed. Park rangers and police are staged at 3 access points, all within an hour of your position. Keep collecting evidence if you can safely do so. When I returned, Elise was studying a trail map. You look a little flushed, Mom. Feeling okay. I touched my forehead dramatically. Actually, I am feeling a bit dizzy. Probably just the altitude. Her eyes lit up with barely concealed excitement. Let me take your picture. You don't look good. As she snapped photos, I realized she was documenting what she believed were the early symptoms of whatever she'd put in my water, creating evidence of my natural decline before the accident she was planning. Maybe we should rest longer, she suggested. Her concern theatrical? No, I'll be all right. Let's keep going. I purposely stumbled slightly, giving her what she wanted, evidence of deterioration as we hiked through the afternoon. I carefully steered our conversation toward her financial troubles, letting her think my mental state was becoming more pliable. So these investments with Ryan, how bad is it really, Elise? Perhaps thinking I was becoming less lucid, she was surprisingly forthcoming. Bad. Around $350,000. That's manageable, honey. We could work something thousand. She gave a bitter laugh. Try 100,000, Mom. The number shocked me despite my preparation. Elise, how did you? It wasn't all at once, she snapped. Ryan had these investors' high return opportunities. We borrowed some money to get started. Then we needed more to cover the first loans. When things went south, it spiraled. Loan sharks, I translated. She winced. They're not the kind of people who take "I need more time" for an answer. But it'll be fine. There's a payment coming soon that will fix everything. She avoided my eyes as she said this, adjusting her pack unnecessarily. As evening approached, we set up camp in a small clearing. While Elise collected firewood, I used the opportunity to examine her pack more thoroughly. Hidden in a waterproof bag, I found hospital badges, prescription pads, and a small collection of pills. I recognized from my research as digitalis, a heart medication that in larger doses could cause cardiac arrest. My blood ran cold. If I hadn't been warned, if I hadn't switched our water bottles. I also discovered a second burner phone with text messages between Elise and Ryan discussing inheritance coming after the hiking trip, and coordinates for a meeting point on the other side of the mountain, not on our planned route inaccessible by vehicle. I quickly photographed everything with the hidden camera Teresa had provided before returning the items exactly as I'd found them. As darkness fell, we sat by the campfire, eating rehydrated meals. Elise seemed increasingly agitated, checking her phone frequently despite the lack of service. Mom, she finally said, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. I know about Dad. What about Dad? That he didn't die of a heart attack? That he killed himself because of gambling debts? The truth I'd protected her from for 5 years hung in the air between us like smoke? How did you? I found the real death certificate when I was looking for my birth certificate last year. Suicide by asphyxiation. Why did you lie to me? Her voice cracked with genuine pain. I was trying to protect you, I whispered. Protect me. Her laugh was harsh. Or protect his reputation. Do you know what it's like finding out your entire life was built on lies? That the reason I had to leave Stanford wasn't some temporary financial setback, but because Dad gambled away everything, including my college fund. That's not. And then there was the insurance money, she continued, her voice rising. All that money that could have saved my education, my future, and you kept it all for yourself. Elise, there was no insurance money, I said quietly. Your father's policy was voided by the suicide. The bank took the house. I've been working 2 jobs for the past 5 years to pay off his debts. She stared at me, confusion visible even in the flickering firelight, but Ryan said, he found records of a payout. What? Whatever Ryan found was wrong, I said firmly. Is that why you're doing this? For money that doesn't exist? Doing what? She asked quickly, her guard back up. I don't know what you're talking about. I met her eyes across the fire. I think you do, Elise. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the crackling of the flames and the distant call of a night bird. After our tense exchange, Elise abruptly changed tactics. She reached into her pack and pulled out the bottle of Glenlivet she'd purchased earlier. Let's lighten the mood, she suggested, her voice overly bright. A toast to new beginnings. I watched her pour 2 cups, noting how she gave me a significantly larger portion. When she handed me my cup, I deliberately fumbled it. Sorry, clumsy fingers. Let me see yours, we can toast properly. A flash of panic crossed her face as I took her cup and handed her mine. Actually, she said quickly, I shouldn't drink. I'm on medication for ... allergies. Just a sip for the toast, I insisted, raising the cup she'd intended for me. 2. Truth and new beginnings. She hesitated, then clinked her cup against mine. I pretended to drink while watching her pretend to do the same. Later, after we'd retired to our separate tents, I sent my scheduled text to Teresa. Phase 1 confirmed. Proceeding with caution, her reply was immediate. Police stationed at Ranger outposts. Stay alert. I lay awake listening. Around midnight, I heard the soft crunch of footsteps approaching my tent. Through the thin fabric, I could make out Elise's silhouette as she stood watching for several minutes. I controlled my breathing to mimic deep sleep. She unzipped my tent flap slowly, the sound thunderous in the quiet night. I remained still. As she entered, the beam of her small pen light playing across my face, she checked my breathing, then took several photos with her phone. Satisfied I was unconscious, she retreated and made a hushed call. It's taking longer than expected, I heard her whisper. We may need to move to Plan B. No, I can't just... There are rangers in the area. I know what's at stake, Ryan. The next morning, I made a show of moving sluggishly, occasionally steadying myself against trees as we broke camp. Elise watched me with barely concealed anticipation. Not feeling well, she asked. Her concern theatrical. Just a little dizzy, I mumbled. Probably the altitude. I have some pills that might help, she offered quickly, producing a small container from her pocket. What are they? Just over-the-counter stuff? For altitude sickness? I took the pills with exaggerated gratitude, then palmed them when she looked away, disposing of them in the undergrowth when I pretended to stumble. Maybe we should change our route, Elise suggested, consulting the map. There's a shorter path that passes Eagle's Cliff. We could reach the next ranger station by nightfall if we push. Whatever you think is best, I said, playing the increasingly dependent mother. I trust you, honey. As predicted, the clear skies gave way to gathering clouds as we hiked through the morning. The distant rumble of thunder punctuated our ascent. Toward higher ground. Storm's coming, I observed. Maybe we should find shelter. It's moving away from us, Elise lied smoothly. We'll be fine if we keep going. The trail narrowed as we approached a section that hugged the mountainside. To our right, a sheer drop of several hundred feet. The path was barely wide enough for single-file travel with loose stones making each step treacherous. Let me help you, Elise insisted, positioning herself close behind me. It gets narrow here. I felt her hand on my backpack as we navigated the ledge. The wind picked up, suddenly, and with it I felt a firm push that was far from accidental. Only my prepared stance and the hiking poles Teresa had insisted I bring prevented me from pitching forward into the abyss. Mom, Elise gasped, grabbing my jacket as if to steady me. Be careful, you almost fell. Thank you, I said, my heart hammering. These gusts are stronger than they look. Lightning flashed overhead, followed immediately by a deafening crack of thunder. The storm was directly above us now, not moving away as Elise had claimed. We need to get off this exposed ridge, I said firmly. It's not safe. We're almost past it, Elise argued. If we turn back now, we lose hours. Another lightning strike hit a tree less than 100 yards ahead, sending splinters flying. Rain began pelting us in heavy sheets. This isn't a debate, I shouted over the storm. Basic safety protocol, we need shelter now. Frustration contorted her features, but even Elise couldn't argue with the danger of our position. Fine, she spat. There's a cave system marked on the map, just down this side trail. The cave was shallow but dry, offering protection from the worsening storm. As thunder crashed outside, Elise paced like a caged animal, occasionally checking her phone, despite the lack of service. "We're losing time," she muttered. "Losing time for what, Elise?" She froze, then forced a casual shrug. "Just meant we're falling behind schedule. What's the rush? I thought this trip was about reconnecting, not racing through the wilderness." She sat across from me, her expression unreadable in the dim light. After a long moment, she spoke in a voice I hadn't heard since she was a child, vulnerable almost. "Frightened? I'm in trouble, Mom. Worse than I said before. The loans." She nodded. "Ryan, he's not who I thought he was. The investments were real at first, but then," she wrapped her arms around herself, "he has dangerous friends. People who don't take no for an answer. Has he threatened you?" I asked, maternal concern temporarily overriding my caution. "He said if I don't get the money by Friday, they'll make an example of me." Her voice cracked. "I don't know what to do." For a moment, I almost believed her this could explain everything. Maybe she wasn't trying to harm me at all. Maybe she was planning to ask for help once we'd reconnected. Then I remembered the poison in my water bottle, the digitalis hidden in her pack, the accidental push on the ledge. "So that's why you maxed out credit cards in my name?" I asked quietly. "Why you took out a life insurance policy on me without my knowledge?" Her head snapped up, eyes wide. "What are you? And the poison in my water today, was that Ryan's idea too? Or the climbing rope with the strategic cuts I found in your pack this morning?" The vulnerable mask fell away, replaced by cold calculation. "You've been going through my things, and you've been planning my death." I stated it plainly, watching her face for any sign of the daughter I'd once known. "The only question is whether you're doing it to pay off Ryan, or if he convinced you I somehow deserved it." For several heartbeats, we stared at each other as strangers across the cave, the storm raging outside, a pale reflection of the tempest between us. "You don't understand," she finally said. "None of this was supposed to happen. Dad's lies, the debts, Stanford, it all started with you hiding the truth. So this is revenge, for protecting you from knowledge that would have destroyed you. When you were 19, it's survival," she snapped. "Ryan knows people who will kill me if I don't pay them back. The insurance money is the only way out." "Elise, listen to yourself," I pleaded. "You're talking about murdering your mother to pay off loan sharks. How did it come to this? What happened to the girl who wanted to change the world with environmental law?" "She grew up," Elise said bitterly. "She learned the world doesn't care about justice or truth. It only cares about money and power. Ryan taught you that, did he?" A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face, quickly suppressed. "Ryan understands how the world really works." "Ryan is using you," I said gently. "Whatever he's told you about me, about your father, about your options, it's manipulation." "You don't know him," she insisted, but I heard doubt creeping into her voice. "I know he's convinced a daughter too. Murder her mother for money that will go straight into his pocket," I countered. "I know he's exploiting your pain and resentment, rather than helping you find a legitimate way out of your troubles." The storm outside began to subside, the thunder now distant rumbles. In its wake, a heavy silence filled the cave. "It's too late," Elise finally whispered. "You don't understand how deep this goes. What I've already done? It's never too late to stop," I said, reaching for her hand. "Whatever you've done, whatever you've planned, it stops now. We'll find another way." She withdrew her hand, expression hardening once more. "There is no other way." As gray daylight filtered into the cave, I realized that my daughter was now more dangerous than ever, cornered, desperate, and still determined to see her plan through. The storm had passed, but the real danger was just beginning. As we emerged from the cave, the forest felt renewed after the storm. Water droplets sparkled on leaves, and the air carried that distinctive scent of earth and pine that follows rain. I walked slightly ahead of Elise, hyper-aware of her every movement behind me. "The main trail should be just beyond that ridge," she said, her voice artificially bright. The confrontation in the cave seemed to have sharpened her determination, rather than diminished it. We had barely crested the ridge when a voice called out from our left. "Hello there! Thank goodness for friendly faces." A tall man with salt and pepper hair emerged from a stand of trees, his expensive hiking gear muddied but intact. He looked to be in his early 50s, with the lean build of someone who spent considerable time outdoors. "Got separated from my group during the storm," he explained, approaching with an easy smile. "Name's Dominic Foster." "Margaret Wilson," I replied, extending my hand before Elise could intervene. "And this is my daughter, Elise." "Mom," Elise hissed, her displeasure barely concealed. "We really need to keep moving if we're going to make up for lost time." Dominic's eyebrows rose slightly. "Going my way. I'm headed toward Eagles Point. safety in numbers and all that. Actually, we're on a mother-daughter trip, Elise cut in. Private family time. We'd be glad for the company, I countered, especially after that storm. The trails could be dangerous. Elise's glare could have melted stone, but she couldn't object without seeming suspicious. I watched her mentally, recalculating, adapting to this unexpected complication. Are you a regular hiker? I asked Dominic as we started walking. Every chance I get, he replied. Spent 20 years as a paramedic in Baltimore. Nature's my therapy now that I'm retired. Noticed how Elise tensed at the word paramedic. A paramedic, she asked with forced casualness. My mother's been feeling unwell. Altitude sickness, we think. I recognized her strategy, immediately laying groundwork to explain away any symptoms. I might display from whatever she planned next. Nothing. Serious? I said quickly. Just a little lightheaded yesterday. Dominic gave me an appraising look. Common enough up here. Proper hydration helps. Mind if I check your pulse? Old habits die hard. Before Elise could object, I'd extended my wrist. As Dominic took my pulse, I noticed how he positioned himself between Elise and me. His fingers tapped a subtle pattern against my skin Morse code. I realized with a jolt. Aware. Help coming. My heart leaped to my throat. Not a random hiker, after all. Perfectly normal, he announced. Just keep drinking water. Elise hovered nearby, visibly unsettled by Dominic's presence. Mom's always been dramatic about her health, she said with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. I think she's just out of shape, maybe even early dementia, though she won't see a doctor. The strategy was clear discredit. Anything I might say to Dominic? I'm right here, Elise, I said sharply, and my mind is perfectly clear. Of course it is, Mom, she replied with exaggerated patience. No one's saying otherwise. Dominic's expression revealed nothing, but I noticed how he carefully observed our interaction. As we walked, he positioned himself slightly ahead on narrow sections of the trail, but always between Elise and me on wider paths. By midday, we reached a crucial fork in the trail. One path led through a valley beside a stream clearly safer. After the storm, the other hugged the mountainside, eventually passing the notorious Eagle's Cliff. Valley route is our best bet, Dominic said, studying his map. The upper trail will be treacherous after that rain mudslides, loose rocks. But Eagle's Cliff was the whole point of this trip, Elise protested, a note of desperation in her voice. The views Mom wanted to see. I don't recall mentioning those views, I interjected. That was your suggestion, wasn't it? Elise's expression flickered between frustration and calculation. Fine, she finally conceded. Valley route it is. That evening we made camp in a clearing beside the stream. As I gathered firewood, Dominic casually joined me. Your daughter seems very concerned about your health, he remarked, his voice neutral. Too concerned, perhaps, I replied carefully. Interesting dynamic between you two, he continued. How long has it been since you've spent time together? About 3 years. And this reconciliation was her idea. The hiking trip to a remote location with dangerous cliffs. I met his eyes directly. Yes. Shortly after she took out a large life insurance policy on me that I never knew about. Dominic's expression remained unchanged, but his voice dropped lower. I saw her checking something in your water bottle earlier. I replaced it with mine while she was setting up her tent. With a sudden certainty, I knew I could trust him. While bending to pick up a branch, I slipped him the note I'd prepared earlier. My daughter may try to harm me. Please watch her actions carefully. He read it quickly, then crushed it into his pocket. With a barely perceptible nod, he returned to gathering wood that night. Elise was uncharacteristically quiet during dinner, her eyes darting between Dominic and me. She suggested repeatedly that he must want to catch up with his group, or make better time alone, but he deflected each hint with good-natured stubbornness. I'm not in any rush, he kept saying, and 3 is safer than 2 in these mountains. After Elise finally retired to her tent, Dominic moved to sit beside me at the fire. She's asleep, he murmured after 20 minutes of silence. Now we can talk. You're not really a lost hiker, are you? I asked directly. He shook his head. Undercover park ranger working with Detective Harmon and Teresa? There's been a series of suspicious hiking accidents in the past month. Your situation raised red flags. Relief flooded through me. Thank God. I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep this up. You're doing remarkably well, he said. But things are more complicated than we initially thought. That water bottle from yesterday tested positive for digitalis, enough to cause cardiac arrest that would look natural in a woman your age with no history of heart problems. My blood ran cold. She really was going to kill me. Not just her, Dominic said grimly. We've been investigating this Ryan person she mentioned. He has a history of insurance fraud, and we've connected him to 2 other hiking fatalities currently under investigation. Similar pattern: vulnerable targets, recently acquired life insurance, accidental deaths in remote locations. So Elise is just his latest accomplice. And potentially his next victim, Dominic added. The pattern suggests he disposes of his partners once they've served their purpose, less chance of them talking later. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My daughter was both predator and prey in this scenario, manipulated into betraying me, while being set up to take the fall if anything went wrong. What do we do now? I asked. Keep gathering evidence, Dominic said. I've established a secure communication channel with the rescue team. They're positioned strategically around the mountain, but we need Ryan to make his move before we can arrest them both. And if Elise tries something before then? Dominic's expression was grim. Stay close to me, don't eat or drink anything she prepares, and be ready to move quickly if the situation deteriorates. Morning arrived with heavy mist clinging to the valley. As we packed our camp, Elise approached Dominic with forced friendliness. You know, Dominic, you're clearly an experienced hiker. You must be getting frustrated with our slow pace. Why don't you go ahead? We'd hate to hold you back. Not a chance, he replied cheerfully. I've grown rather fond of our little group. Besides, these mountains can be unpredictable. I'd feel terrible if something happened to you ladies after I left. The look that crossed Elise's face was pure venom, quickly masked by a tight smile. While she went to fill our water bottles at the stream, Dominic pulled me aside. Check your equipment, he whispered. Anything compromised? A quick inspection revealed my climbing rope had been partially cut enough to break under tension, but not enough to be immediately visible. Dominic silently handed me replacement equipment from his pack. Be careful, he warned. She's getting desperate. The day's hike took us through increasingly rugged terrain. At one point, Elise moved ahead through a narrow passage between towering rock walls, disappearing around a bend. Wait, she called back. I want to check something. Then you can come through. Dominic and I exchanged glances. Let me go first, he insisted, moving forward cautiously. Seconds later, a thunderous crash echoed through the passage as a cascade of rocks tumbled down exactly where I would have been walking. Dominic pulled me backward just in time. Mom. Elise came running back, her face a perfect mask of concern. Are you okay? That was so close. Very close, I agreed. My voice steady despite my racing heart, almost as if it was timed perfectly. Her eyes narrowed slightly before she forced another concerned expression. What are you saying? That was just bad luck. Of course it was, Dominic cut in smoothly. But perhaps we should find an alternate route. This passage seems unstable. We detoured around the rockfall, adding hours to our journey. As we navigated a steep incline, Elise's phone suddenly pinged a surprising sound in the wilderness where we'd had no service for days. She stepped away quickly, but not before I saw her face drain of color at whatever message she'd received. When she returned, her hands were trembling slightly. Everything okay? I asked. Fine, she snapped. Just a notification from an old app, but the change in her was palpable. Her movements became jerky, anxious, her eyes constantly scanning the forest around us. Whatever that message contained had genuinely frightened her. When we stopped for lunch, I watched her carefully adding something to my food pouch, while pretending to adjust the portable stove. Dominic created a well-timed distraction, allowing me to switch food packets when she turned away. Throughout the meal, she watched me eat with unsettling intensity, her anxiety visibly mounting when I showed no adverse effects to whatever she'd added to my food. Feeling okay, Mom? She asked for the third time, her voice tight. Never better, I replied truthfully. This mountain air must agree with me. As evening approached, we selected a campsite in a small clearing, while Dominic and I set up tents. A branch snapped in the woods nearby. We all turned toward the sound. A man emerged from between the trees, his confident stride at odds with someone who should be lost in the wilderness. He wore high-end hiking gear that looked barely used, and his smile didn't reach his cold blue eyes. There you are, babe, he called to Elise. Been looking everywhere for you. Elise's shock appeared genuine. Ryan, what are you doing here? So this was Ryan, more handsome than I'd expected, with the polished charm of a practiced con man. He looked to be in his mid-30s, with an athletic build and the hyper-vigilant eyes of a predator. Got worried when you didn't check in? He said smoothly, approaching our camp. His gaze swept over me with calculating assessment, then locked. On to Dominic with visible suspicion. Who's your friend? Just another hiker, Dominic replied easily. Got separated from my group during the storm. Your girlfriend and her mother were kind enough to let me tag along. Ryan's smile tightened. How fortunate for everyone. That night around the campfire, Ryan dominated the conversation with stories of his supposed investment success and world travels. But beneath his charming exterior, I noticed how he kept steering the conversation back to me, my health, my age, my life in general. "It's so important for people in their later years to have proper insurance," he remarked casually. "You never know what might happen, especially in places like this." He gestured to the wilderness around us. "Accidents happen so easily." "I'm well protected," I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "In more ways than one." A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face before his smile returned. "Glad to hear it." As everyone retired to their tents, I activated my recording device. Sure enough, around midnight, I captured Elise and Ryan having a heated, whispered argument. "Outside you weren't supposed to come," she hissed. "Everything was under control." "Clearly not," Ryan shot back. 3 days in, and she's still walking around. "And who's this guy? He's not buying our act for a second." "I was handling it," Elise insisted. "The cliff plan would have worked if not for the storm, and I've been adding the digitalis gradually." "Like you said, we don't have time for gradually anymore," Ryan cut in. "The investors are getting impatient. They've moved the deadline up. Either we finish this now and get the insurance money, or we're both dead." "What do you mean both?" Elise asked, her voice suddenly small. "You think they'll just let you walk away if we don't deliver? You signed those loan papers too, babe. As far as they're concerned, you're as responsible as I am." There was a long pause before Elise spoke again, her voice lower and more desperate than I'd ever heard it. "This wasn't the plan, Ryan. You said no one would get hurt, just a fake disappearance, some planted evidence I'd never see her again. But she'd be alive somewhere." Ryan's laugh was cold. "And you believed that? Grow up, Elise. 2 million doesn't come free. Now we need to deal with both of them. The witness complicates things, but we can make it work. A tragic accident. 2 bodies never recovered." Stop the recording, my heart pounding. So Elise had never intended to kill me herself. That had been Ryan's plan all along. Not that it excused her actions, but the revelation shifted something in my understanding of my daughter. Later that night, I was startled awake by the sound of my tent zipper. I reached for the hunting knife Dominic had given me, but relaxed slightly when I saw it was Elise. "Mom," she whispered urgently, "we need to leave now." "While Ryan's asleep, why should I trust you?" I asked, though I kept my voice low. "Because he's going to kill us both," she replied, genuine fear evident in her voice. "This wasn't supposed to happen like this. I never wanted." She stopped swallowing hard. "Please, we need to go." Before I could respond, Dominic's voice came from just outside my tent. "Everything okay in there? Margaret?" Elise froze. Ryan's voice followed, suddenly alert. "What's going on?" The moment of potential escape evaporated as quickly as it had appeared. Dawn broke with an uneasy tension hanging over our camp. During the night, essential survival equipment had gone missing. Water purification tablets, the satellite phone, emergency flares. Ryan suggested we split up to search the area, an obvious attempt to isolate potential victims. "No one goes anywhere alone," Dominic stated firmly. "That's basic wilderness protocol." Ryan's charming facade had begun to crack, revealing glimpses of something far more dangerous underneath. "Look, friend, I appreciate your concern, but this is a family matter now. Maybe it's time you continued on your way and leave 2 women with a man they barely know in the middle of nowhere," Dominic replied evenly. "I don't think so." The standoff was broken when Elise announced she'd found some of the missing equipment scattered near the stream, an obvious lie designed to lure us into separate searches. As we broke camp, Ryan took control, directing us toward a trail that veered away from our planned route. "Shortcut," he explained vaguely when Dominic questioned him. Dominic caught my eye and shook his head slightly. This new path would take us further from help, deeper into isolated territory. The day progressed. With increasing tension, Ryan now carried a hunting knife openly on his belt, dropping all pretense of being just a concerned boyfriend. He kept Elise close, his hand often gripping her arm with barely concealed force. When she tried to distance herself from him during a water break, Elise managed to approach me while Ryan consulted his map with Dominic. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her eyes darting to ensure Ryan wasn't watching. "I never meant for any of this to happen. The debts, the threats, it all spiraled out of control." "We can fix this," I said quickly. "There are police stationed throughout the park. Dominic is working with them." Her eyes widened. "He's a cop, park ranger. We've been documenting everything." Fear and something like hope flickered across her face. "Ryan has a gun," she whispered. "And he's not working alone. There's a woman waiting at the extraction point's arena. She's posed as my friend, but she's actually his partner. They've done this before." "Mom?" Before she could continue, Ryan appeared beside us, having a nice mother-daughter chat. His tone was light, but his eyes were cold as he pulled Elise away from me. The trail grew increasingly treacherous as Ryan forced us toward. What? Dominic quietly confirmed was Eagle's Cliff, the dangerous overlook where several fatal accidents had occurred over the years. Perfect place for an unfortunate tragedy, Ryan remarked with chilling casualness as the cliff edge came into view. Beautiful last view, at least. He no longer bothered hiding his intentions. With each step, the pretense fell away, revealing the calculated predator beneath. He positioned himself behind Elise and me, herding us toward the cliff, while keeping Dominic in his sight. You know what has to happen here, he said, his voice suddenly hard. The unfortunate mother-daughter hiking accident. Very sad. Daughter distraught, tries to save mother, both fall to their deaths. And where does the grieving boyfriend fit in? Dominic asked calmly. The one who conveniently inherits everything through the daughter? Ryan's smile was cold. Smart guy. Too bad you had to stick your nose where it doesn't belong. In one fluid motion, he pulled a handgun from beneath his jacket. Change of plans. 3 tragic deaths today. You won't get away with this, I said, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. The authorities know exactly where we are and what you're doing. Ryan laughed. Nice try. But no one knows you're here except my associate waiting at the extraction point. By the time they find your bodies, I'll be long gone with the insurance. Money. The perfect crime. Except for all the evidence I've been gathering, I replied, playing my final card. The credit card fraud, the poison attempts, the insurance policy. All documented and in the hands of the police. Ryan's confidence faltered slightly. What are you talking about? I've known about this plan from the beginning, I said, turning to Elise. Every step. The digitalis in my water, the tampered climbing rope, the rock slide. All recorded and transmitted to law enforcement. Elise stared at me in shock. You knew all along? From the moment you called to suggest this trip, I confirmed. Did you really think I wouldn't investigate when credit cards appeared in my name? When a life insurance policy was taken out without my knowledge? Ryan's eyes darted between us, his gun hand tensing. Shut up, both of you. It doesn't matter. What you knew, you're still going over that cliff. There's more, Dominic added calmly. We know about the other victims, Ryan. The hiking accidents in Colorado and Wyoming last year. The partners who conveniently disappeared afterward. He looked directly at Elise. Did you know about Kimberly Watson and Jason Mercer? Elise? Your predecessors who ended up dead after they served their purpose. What is he talking about? Elise asked, turning to Ryan. He's lying, Ryan snapped. Don't listen to him. We have proof, I continued. And we know about Serena too, your actual partner. The woman who's been posing as Elise's friend, setting her up to take the fall while you two escape with the money. Elise's face drained of color. Serena, she's working with you? I thought she was my friend. Everyone's working an angle, babe, Ryan said coldly. Lesson you never learned. So I was next, Elise whispered. After my mother, I would have had an accident too. Enough talking, Ryan growled, gesturing with the gun. Move, toward the edge now. We stood at the precipice of Eagle's Cliff, the canyon below stretching into a dizzying void. Ryan kept the gun trained on us, his earlier charm completely replaced by cold determination. Ladies first, he said, gesturing toward the edge. Nice and easy. Make it look good. I took a half step forward, watching his eyes. You know what the police will find most interesting, Ryan? The identical insurance scams in 3 different states. The consistent MO. They'll connect all those dots back to you, no matter what happens here today. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from him. You're bluffing. From my jacket pocket, I slowly withdrew the emergency flare I'd kept hidden. Am I? Ryan's eyes widened as I raised the flare. Don't? I struck it before he could finish, the sudden brilliant light and smoke creating momentary confusion. Dominic moved with surprising speed for his age, lunging toward Ryan while the man was temporarily blinded by the flare. In the struggle that followed, Ryan's military combat training became evident. He countered Dominic's attack with practiced precision. The 2 men grappling dangerously close to the cliff edge, the gun discharged, the shot echoing across the canyon. Dominic stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder as blood seeped between his fingers. No, I screamed, starting forward, but Ryan swung the gun toward me. Don't move, he snarled. This ends now. What happened next unfolded with dreamlike clarity. As Ryan aimed the gun at me, Elise suddenly lunged forward, throwing herself at him with a guttural cry that contained years of manipulation and betrayal. You used me, she screamed, knocking him off balance. You were going to kill me too. They struggled violently, the gun forgotten as Ryan fought to throw her off. They staggered dangerously close to the cliff edge where rain from the previous day had softened the ground. Elise, I called out in warning, starting toward them. Everything seemed to slow down as the earth beneath them gave way. Ryan tumbled backward over the edge, dragging Elise with him. In that eternal moment, our eyes met mother and daughter, and I saw the little girl who had once held my hand crossing streets, who had cried when her father missed her recitals, who had somewhere along the way become lost to me. I lunged forward. Without thought, my hands shooting out to grasp hers as she began to fall. The jolt nearly pulled my shoulder from its socket, but I held fast, my body half over the crumbling edge as Ryan continued his plummet to the rocks below. "I've got you," I gasped, feeling my grip slipping. "Hold on." Elise's eyes were wide with terror, her fingers desperately clutching mine. "Mom, don't look down," I commanded. "Look at me. Just at me." Dominic appeared beside me despite his wounded shoulder, adding his strength to mine. Together, inch by agonizing inch, we pulled Elise back from the brink. We collapsed on solid ground, gasping and trembling. For several minutes no one spoke. The enormity of what had just happened, what had almost happened, settled over us like a physical weight. Finally, Dominic broke the silence, pressing a hand to his bleeding shoulder. "We need to signal the Rangers. They'll be monitoring for the flare." Within an hour, the mountainside was alive with emergency personnel. Helicopters circled overhead while rescue teams secured the area. Paramedics treated Dominic's gunshot wound thankfully. The bullet had passed cleanly through his shoulder without hitting anything vital. Detective Harmon arrived with Teresa, their expressions grim as they surveyed the scene and took our statements. Rangers had already located Ryan's body at the base of the cliff. "And this Serena woman?" Harmon asked, as a paramedic wrapped a shock blanket around my shoulders. Waiting at coordinates we found in Ryan's phone, Teresa replied, "We've got officers moving to apprehend her now." Elise sat apart from us, her wrists zip-tied in front of her as she gave her statement to another officer. Her face was blank, drained of all emotion as the full consequences of her actions began to settle over her. "What happens to her now?" I asked Harmon quietly. "Identity theft, fraud, conspiracy to commit murder," he listed dispassionately. "She's looking at serious time. She saved my life in the end," I pointed out. "And Dominic's. She chose to stop Ryan when it mattered most." Harmon's expression softened slightly. "That will count for something, as will her cooperation in bringing down the rest of Ryan's network." As the medical helicopter arrived to transport Dominic to the hospital, he paused beside me. "You're one hell of a woman, Margaret Wilson," he said with a tired smile. "Not many could have done what you did up here." "Thank you," I said simply. "For everything?" "Just doing my job," he replied, but the warmth in his eyes suggested something more. "Maybe when this is all sorted out, we could get coffee somewhere that isn't on the side of a mountain." Despite everything, I found myself smiling. "I'd like that." As he was loaded into the helicopter, I walked over to where Elise sat guarded by an officer. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry as she looked up at me. "Why did you grab my hand?" she asked, her voice hollow. "After everything I did because you're my daughter," I said simply. "Because some instincts run deeper than betrayal." A single tear slid down her cheek. "I was never going to kill you," she whispered. "In my version, you just disappeared. New identity, new life. The insurance was supposed to pay off Ryan's people, and you'd be alive somewhere else. But Ryan had different plans." She nodded, fresh tears following the first. "I was so stupid, so blind. I believed him when he said it was the only way out." "There's always another way," I said gently. Even now, the following weeks passed in a blur of legal proceedings, police interviews, and media attention that I neither wanted nor welcomed. The story had everything that fascinated: the public betrayal, attempted murder, a dramatic cliffside rescue. Through it all, I remained steadfast in my balanced account. Yes, Elise had conspired against me. Yes, she had committed crimes that required justice. But she had also been manipulated by a practiced predator, and in the crucial moment she had chosen to save rather than harm. At the courthouse, Detective Harmon updated me on the expanding investigation. Ryan and Serena had been running this scheme for years. 7 accidents across 3 states, different accomplices each time, most of whom ended up as victims themselves. Elise's information has been invaluable in connecting the final dots. "Has she been cooperative?" I asked. "Completely," he confirmed. "The prosecutor is taking that into consideration along with her actions on the cliff." When Elise's case finally came before the judge, I was there in the front row. The woman who stood before the court seemed years younger than the one who had tried to lure me to my death fragile. Remorseful, stripped of pretense. Given the defendant's cooperation, lack of prior criminal record, and the mitigating circumstances of coercion, the judge announced, This court sentences Elise Wilson to 18 months in a minimum security facility, followed by 5 years of probation and full restitution payments. It was less than the prosecutor had sought, more than the defense had hoped for. It was justice tempered with mercy, the best outcome we could have expected. In the hospital afterward, I finally told Elise the complete truth about her father. Not the sanitized version I'd maintained for years, but the raw, painful reality. How Richard's gambling addiction had spiraled out of control. How he'd mortgaged our future and hers. How his suicide note had begged me to protect her from his failures. There was never any insurance money, I explained. His policy was voided by the suicide. I worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat and pay off his debts. The modest lifestyle you resented was the best I could do. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, her voice small. Because he asked me not to. Because you idolized him. Because I thought I was protecting you from pain. I sighed. I was wrong. Secrets only grow more dangerous with time. During the months of Elise's incarceration, I visited weekly. At first, our conversations were stilted, painful exercises in navigating a new reality. But gradually, with the help of a family therapist, we began rebuilding what had been broken between us. Not the same structure as before, but something new, something honest. I never understood why you were so distant after Dad died, Elise confessed, during one visit. I thought you were pulling away from me because you blamed me somehow. I was drowning, I admitted, working constantly to keep us financially afloat, grieving alone, guarding his secret. I didn't have anything left to give emotionally, and I was so wrapped up in my own pain that I couldn't see yours, she replied, reaching for my hand across the table. Dominic and I began seeing each other after his recovery, our shared trauma creating an unusual foundation for a relationship. His steady presence helped anchor me through the tumultuous months of legal proceedings and emotional reckonings. Not exactly how I planned to meet someone, he joked during one of our quiet dinners, but I've learned not to question the strange paths that bring good things into our lives. When Elise was released, I was waiting outside the facility, not with balloons and celebration, but with quiet dignity and a key to the small apartment I'd secured for her near my home. It had a spare bedroom for me when I visited, and a hiking guide on the coffee table, a symbol of paths we might travel together in the future, safely and honestly. You didn't have to do all this, she said as she surveyed the simple but comfortable space. I wanted to, I replied. Everyone deserves a fresh start. The most profound healing came a year later when we returned to the mountains, different trails, different purposes. We hiked in companionable silence until we reached a scenic overlook where the entire valley spread before us in autumn glory. There, we placed a small stone marker for Richard, not at the spot of his death, but in a place of natural beauty, where we could both remember the good in him without denying the truth of his flaws. I think I understand him better now, Elise said as we stood shoulder to shoulder. How someone can make terrible choices when they feel trapped. How easy it is to believe there's no other way out. The difference is that you found your way back, I pointed out. You chose differently in the end. She took my hand, her grip firm and warm. Because you never gave up on me, even when you had every reason to. That's what family is, I said. Simply, not perfect, not always right, but persistent in love. Our journey back to each other wasn't completed in a single dramatic moment on a cliff edge, but in the 1,000 small steps that followed visits, conversations, shared tears, and eventually tentative laughter. We built a new relationship, not on the shaky foundation of secrets and resentment, but on hard-won truth and forgiveness. Now, 5 years after that fateful hiking trip, my phone lights up with a familiar name. Elise calling for our weekly dinner? As I prepare to leave, I pause before the framed photo on my mantelpiece and me on our most recent hike, genuinely smiling with the sunset behind us. Not at a cliff edge, but at a new summit we've climbed. Together. Dominic calls from the kitchen where he's finishing the dishes. Tell her we've got the campsite reserved for next month. 3 tents, just like old times. I smile at the irony that the activity meant to end my life has become our family tradition of renewal. We hike different trails now, but we hike them together, eyes open to both the beauty and dangers that lie ahead. Ready? Dominic asks, car keys in hand. I take one last look at the photo, at the daughter I almost lost and the life I almost didn't live to see. Ready? I reply, stepping forward into whatever comes next. What would you do if the person who once meant everything to you became the greatest threat to your existence? When betrayal comes from those we love most, it forces us to question not just our relationships, but the very foundations of trust we've built our lives upon. Margaret's story reminds us that sometimes the most dangerous predators aren't strangers in the wilderness, but those who know exactly where our hearts are most vulnerable. If this story of maternal instinct, survival, and eventual redemption resonated with you, Please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking narratives that explore the complex terrain of human relationships. Share in the comments your thoughts on Margaret and Elise's journey. Would you have found the strength to forgive? Or would the betrayal have severed that bond forever?